Welcome to Future Media. Today I returned for my regular segment on Disrupt Radio. The topic was US President Biden's executive order to put guardrails on AI. He has invoked wartime powers to pump the brakes to protect privacy, limit national security risks, and protect content. Perhaps most important, though, was the removal of catch-all protections for web operators that have enabled them to sidestep laws and grow at any cost. I report on this in depth at my Substack Future Media. Hope you find it interesting. You can listen to Disrupt Live at www.disrupt.radio. But for now, let's get into it.
This is Muller with George McEncrow on Disrupt Radio.
New presidential order on artificial intelligence, setting national rules on the rapidly growing technology that has big potential but also comes with risks.
The White House is calling this the strongest action that any government has taken on artificial intelligence safety and security. Today, the president signing an executive order that would require developers working on the most powerful AI models to share their safety test results with the government before releasing their products to the public.
AI is all around us. One thing is clear. To realize the promise of AI and avoid the risk, we need to govern this technology, and there's no other way around it, in my view. It must be governed.
Good luck with that, Joe Biden. Governing AI. Ricky Sutton, founder of and CEO of Uvu, joins me. Ricky, what are the implications of trying to govern AI?
Well, at least they're trying. And so, look, kind of my take on this is that when the internet first started, everybody just said, let's let it go for a run and see where it leads. And we all know where it led, and it's not really where we wanted it to be. And for lots of people, AI is a whole new internet from the ground up. This is all new and everything's going to be different. And so for the US government to kind of get out ahead of it, or at least try to, and get started, that puts us many steps ahead further than we were when the internet started. So from that perspective, they're asking an awful lot, but they've thrown the first firework, and I think that's a good outcome.
And I mean, these are private companies they're publicly listed. Most of them, they have billions of dollars to spend. What sort of leverage can Joe Biden have to bring them to heel when it comes to powerful AI?
Right. So I think that's a really good question. And in the world right now, it feels like big tech's completely unstoppable. But the one thing that can stop big tech is government. And so big tech's unrelenting growth ends at government if government decides it doesn't work. And so the question then becomes, well, why would the government want to do that, right? What possible motivation would they have? And the answer is 100 days away, which is the US federal election. Yeah. So they are deeply worried, as they should be, that all of these new tools and capabilities enable and arm bad actors to cause absolute chaos. And we saw a fair amount of chaos in the last election, but it's nothing compared to what can happen here. And so I think that, self-motivation for the government is the reason that they've acted so early, self-interest.
Yep.
But I also think that governments are more powerful than big tech. They have multiple capabilities to be able to push back. And several US federal departments have been given additional powers and responsibilities under this act. I mean, the executive order was actually brought under military standards. It's a military order that's been brought. That's the level of concern that they have for it. So I actually think that it's great that they've done it. Number one, I think it's great that they've put the big tech guys on notice that AI will be put under the microscope and will be kept a very close eye on. But I also know that it's out of self-motivation. It's taken a long time to get to here, but I'm glad they finally cottoned on.
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting element in that, Trump is the front runner still for the Republican nominee. There was so much paranoia and suspicion and just bizarre theories that were going around and still are about, from people who are, I think, you'd have to almost call it a cult of Trump worship, that JFK Jr. is still alive and running. I mean, it's so extraordinary. Some of the stuff it doesn't really bear thinking about. That was pre-AI, I guess, with the capacity for deep fakes. Even knowing that it's actually real, no matter what, someone like Trump who could get up and say that action of mine was a deep fake, his audience will believe that, won't they? I mean, America seems to me to be on the cusp of an incredibly dangerous place, no matter what Biden does, because the true believers are so, I don't know, they're so unyielding when it comes to taking on counter information or new information, or they're really in a post-truth sort of fantasy era.
Agreed. That post-truth narrative is one that's going to be remembered in the future for this era, right? I think probably the risk is far greater from foreign actors wanting to cause trouble, and as well as domestic. But I think foreign actors must be really frightening for them, because any barrier to impacting the elections has gone with the internet. So that we know that's true. But the challenge with AI is it's a technology that's not widely known and certainly not easily detectable yet. And so therefore the scale and impact could be immense. And so if you're the government of the day, whether you're the incoming government or you're the current government, I'm not sure either of you want that level of total chaos. This is a national security threat, which is why it's an executive order and why it's being brought under military edict. So I think that the eyes are definitely onshore. They've been very careful to thread the needle, the White House, to make sure that the current AI companies in the US aren't too upset with this, but they are upset enough to play nice, which means we'd still like your help to help us detect this situation. But similarly, we're also going to put some restrictions on you and stop you doing things. And I think there's a lot to unpack in that. Maybe a bit later we can talk about Section 230 and the order that gave them impunity in the early days of the internet. There's no mention of that in this order. So it's very careful to make sure that they're both supportive but also limited as we go forward.
All right. I want to come back and talk more about, your newsletter, Future Media. Some of the things that you're talking about, I know to discuss in the newsletter, and in particular, I want to discuss who are the overseas actors or offshore actors that could be interfering not just in the United States elections, but in any election of any democracy or I don't even know if I can call America a democracy, to be honest, sometimes, but still, when it involves itself in other countries' elections. I'm talking with Ricky Sutton.
After a short break, we're back into it. In the second part, we discuss some of the national security risks associated with AI and how Biden's order replaces many of the protections that web operators have had since the dawn of the internet almost 30 years ago. Back to Disrupt Radio.
Ricky Sutton is my guest. He is the founder and CEO of Uvu and also the writer for one of the best newsletters in the world, Future Media. Thank you so much for joining me, Ricky. We're talking about AI intervention, government interventions into big tech. Who are some of the possible troublemakers globally who could interfere with elections in foreign countries?
Well, I think that these days the tech is so accessible, anyone can do it. It's just who wants to do it. So who has the most to gain?
Yeah, well, who's motivated?
Yeah, well, we know that Russia is motivated. We've seen a series of attacks by Russian bot farms over the years, but they've got new tech now. They've got better tools. North Korea wants to cause as much trouble as possible. Many people would say that China's somewhere in the background, but that's probably a politically sensitive thing for them to say publicly.
Yeah.
But the technology is widely available. And the terrible thing is it also opens it up for bad actors that might be much smaller than a nation state. It may be a particularly angry group that might want to get involved. I mean, this technology is available for $200.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed it the other day when my kids were showing me how to take the tops off, make naked any person that you know. That was I think that app costs like $30 or something to be able to do that. That terrified me, coming as a parent and as someone who's been a teacher for a long time. The idea of just being able to do that through AI. But then the bigger picture, I guess one of the things is that people will not be able to distinguish between, like if we do catch somebody doing something real, they will be able to hide behind a defense of a deep fake. And people who, if you are wanting to defame somebody and put them into a position, you can use deep fakes. I know that military will be onto it, but will they be doing that at a government electoral level and not intervening in personal lives? Because you can see people just from family court disputes to unfair dismissals. The possibilities are endless if you get the technology right.
Correct, but the benefits are also massive as well. And so I think that the government were very, 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 very keen. I accentuate that because they made the case about 10 times at the announcement, that they think that AI is probably 80% good and 20% bad. I thought that was a very interesting statement on their part. So they are putting all of the rules in place to deal with the 20%, but they still want to enable the 80. It's just like the internet, right? And so where I think the first internet went wrong was that the internet gave new tech companies the ability to be completely absolved of any legal responsibility for anything they did by publishing content created by third parties. It was in a law called Section 230. And that basically meant that anybody that posted on a website that was provided by Yahoo or by Facebook or by anybody else, Facebook and Yahoo were not liable for that.
No,
and
you
as
could
a result,
publish whatever you wanted. Yeah.
Anything they want. And I'm not sure that the risks of that were properly considered before it happened, because we just didn't know what was coming next. But Section 230 has become a catch-all, get-out-of-jail-free card for tech companies for the best part of 25 years. And media companies don't have that protection. You don't,
No.
I don't. I can't say that. I
No.
can't publish that. I'm liable. And so from that perspective, the web got away. That's where we ended up with that, what we talked about last week, the Wild West web. It's like, oh my goodness, where's it gone? Who's policing this? I think the US government has recognized that we don't know where AI is going to go. There will be good elements of it, but you know what? We are going to put rules on it now at the beginning. And we will tell you that if it's deep fake, you need to tell us it's deep fake. If you have new technologies that are emerging that we don't know about yet, you think are a risk to national security, you have to tell us. And I suspect that there's no penalties detailed in there, but this is the government telling them up front, you misbehave and you don't help here, we will come after you this time.
Is there any chance of putting the genie back in the bottle as far as the internet is concerned and now retrofitting some kind of mechanism that makes Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, any of them accountable for what happens on their platforms and what gets said and what gets published?
No, I don't think that's possible. What you can do is what's really happening already, which is antitrust trials. I mean, no one's talked about antitrust for 20 years, and now we've got 20 happening at the same time. So, antitrust is starting to pull in the excesses of big tech. So that's underway. But what I do see happening is that the public's perception is changing as well. And so I think that as these, if you like, the shiny PR of these companies is starting to fall away, and people are starting to see very clearly the damage that's being done. 31 states are suing Facebook right now for causing child harm, which they say was intentional for profit. These are things that wouldn't have happened a few years ago. They're happening now, and so it gives me hope. So in conclusion, George, my hope here is that public perception is changing political views, and the upcoming election is meaning AI is going to be policed. For the first time, please let us build an internet that actually helps the people, not just 5 or 6 people to turn into trillionaires.
And maybe some of these antitrust cases that are, in play now, if the outcome of those actually gives some of these players a decent enough whack, I don't know how you do that. I don't know whether you make Mark Zuckerberg actually grow a fringe. That would be, I would enjoy seeing that. I never want to see that much of anyone's forehead again. I think, something that would help. Would that impact other players who are potentially going to launch products into the market?
Well, I'll share an anecdote I heard a analyst use on Bloomberg. It was a while ago now, but it was completely pertinent to now. He basically said, if big tech wants to take on government, it's going to need to invest in nuclear weapons. And
good. I like that.
He's basically saying, isn't he, that if the government thinks that there's a national security risk or a risk to democracy that directly impacts on them, they have the biggest hammer of all. They can shut your company down. And I would suggest that the antitrust cases that are happening now are the first signs that government is no longer afraid of bringing these guys to heel if they go too far. Perhaps the excesses have gone too far. You would argue, and I would argue, that they went too far 5-7 years ago.
Absolutely.
But it didn't impact on democracy or the government to the extent that they are now. And I think the last election was a wake-up call.
Yeah, and I think there are different pockets of our community, I think particularly children who are targeted and have no recourse and end up doing terrible things to themselves and their lives because of some of these very, very sinister operators. Or not sinister, maybe they are sinister, I don't know, but certainly indifferent operators and who want to wash their hands of all of that. Ricky, thank you so much for joining me. You fill me with hope about the future, and that, my friend, is a very, very big task. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening. I know you're all busy. Look, the future of the web will impact on us all and the generations that come after us. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, Netflix. They are all jostling for the next $1 trillion, and it's all up for grabs. The experience you get when you next look at a screen will be decided by these events. The court cases, new technologies, emergency orders across the globe, even your next click. These will decide the path of the future, so stay across my Substack Future Media. Please sign up if you haven't already. And stay tuned to Disrupt Radio. Thanks for your time, and I'll be back next week.